Can you believe that Karen from the HOA invaded my yard with a ladder, saying that my antenna polluted the view of the neighborhood? The first thing that made me realize that this woman wasn't quite right in the head was a note, a meticulously folded piece of paper, as if she were delivering a love letter, but with the venom of a court summons. It was stuck to my door with crepe tape and said, in letters so neat that they were aggressive, "The metal structure on top of your residence compromises the visual harmony of the community. We request immediate removal. Metal structure." She was talking about my antenna. Yes, a TV aerial, one of those that still picks up local channels with a bit of a hiss, but which worked perfectly. I'm the type who likes to watch Sunday matches without delay, with a grainy image and all. But apparently, for the lady who defended the aesthetics of the neighborhood, my antenna was a crime against humanity. At first, I laughed. I thought it was one of those bored pensioners who need to invent a new problem every week to feel like they still have a grip on life. I ignored it. I threw the note in the trash. End of story, right? Wrong. The woman began a campaign worthy of an NGO against the metallic visual threat that stood out in the suburban sky. First, she started staring at me every time I went out into the yard. It wasn't a casual look. It was the fixed stare of someone who has already decided that you are the villain in the soap opera of her life. I'd go to put out the garbage, and there she'd be, standing there with her arms crossed, like a gargoyle watching over the HOA's rules. Then came the reports. Yes, reports. One day I found an envelope under the door containing photos of my house taken from specific angles, as if she was trying to prove that my antenna caused some kind of visual eclipse for the neighbors. It was almost artistic. There was even a little arrow drawn in red pen pointing at the antenna, with the word aggressive written underneath. Seriously, who describes an antenna as aggressive? What kind of aesthetic tantrum is that? And then came the stroke of genius. She called an emergency meeting of the HOA with a single item on the agenda: review of elevated structures and visual interference. That's it. She used all her influence as queen of the neighborhood to try to pass a retroactive rule that would basically force me to tear my antenna off the roof because it hurt the visual sensibilities of the residents. At the meeting, she presented a PowerPoint presentation with graphs, arrows, and even a projection of what a more harmonious neighborhood without aggressive elements would look like. Someone applauded, I swear. There was applause. The most bizarre thing, she took a model. Yes, a model, with little cardboard houses and everything, showing the before and after of removing my antenna. In her model, my roof became a minimalist masterpiece, as if by ripping out the antenna, I'd automatically get a magazine house. But the icing on the cake? She pretended it wasn't personal. The woman said, with the cleanest face in the world, that it wasn't an attack on me, but a community initiative to enhance the landscape. This was coming from the same person who had already called my garden an uncontrolled urban jungle, because I had planted 3 shrubs that were not in the official vegetation booklet authorized by the HOA. Even so, nothing prepared me for what was to come. Tired of not seeing her aesthetic justice happen, this lady decided to take action on her own. And that's when the circus caught fire. She literally climbed onto my roof, by ladder, without asking permission, in the middle of the afternoon, wearing a safety vest and helmet, as if she were a NASA engineer about to defuse an atomic bomb. Yes, you read that right. The woman climbed onto my roof to try and bring down the antenna with her bare hands. She did. I didn't even see the exact time the woman started climbing, because I was inside the house, trying to figure out why the microwave was making a strange noise when it heated lasagna. I only realized something was wrong when I heard a metallic noise coming from upstairs, followed by a muffled scream. I opened the back door, and there she was, half her body already on the roof, the rest hanging from the ladder, sweating more than a Marmite lid on market day. She looked like a cross between an out-of-shape fireman and a monkey trying to steal a banana. She balanced so awkwardly that it looked like a scene from a bad comedy, the kind you watch just because you've lost the remote control. And there, in the middle of that suburban theater of horror, she screamed at me as if I were the intruder. "Your equipment isn't up to standard," she shouted, as if that were an argument for trespassing and climbing on other people's roofs with a wrench in your hand. She had a little pouch hanging from her waist, one of those tool pouches, which swung as she tried to approach the antenna. It was all so pathetic that for a second I thought it was a prank. I stood there for a few seconds, not knowing whether to laugh, call the police, or just go back to my lasagna. But then the stairs shook, and it was at that very moment that the world decided to remember that gravity exists. The woman tried to reach the antenna with one hand, stepped on it, and started dancing an involuntary samba on the roof. It was a mixture of "oh my God" and "help" and "it's not what you think," all coming out of her mouth at the same time. I only had time to shout, "Hold on to something!" But the roof was nowhere to run. She slipped, hit her knee on a tile, let out a scream that sounded like something out of a horror movie. She rolled to the end of the fall with a dignity that stayed up there. The woman fell on her butt on the lawn. A dry noise, a dramatic pause, and then a moan that mixed physical pain and shame. I ran over to her, more out of fear of being charged with murder than out of solidarity. And then, to my surprise, she tried to get up as if she had everything under control. "It was an accident," she said, panting with grass stuck to her face and her vest askew. "I was just carrying out a safety inspection, on my roof, without telling anyone, with a portable ladder and a wrench." I had to hold back the urge to laugh, but the best was yet to come. When I suggested she go to hospital, because falling off a roof isn't exactly a light experience, she refused. She said she was fine, that she was already trained for falls. I don't know if she thought she was a movie stunt woman or a contestant on American Ninja Warrior, but the fact is that she got up, wiped her pants with her hands, and still had the audacity to say that it was my fault for installing dangerous structures. Yes, she fell trying to rip my antenna off with her hand, and still managed to blame me for it, as if the antenna had lifted itself up and pushed her down the stairs. I didn't know whether to call an ambulance or an exorcist, because that clearly wasn't normal. The same day, I received an official notification from the HOA. Yes, you read that right. The woman fell off my roof and still had time to file a formal complaint against me, claiming that my house posed a structural risk to members of the community. The level of delirium reached Olympic proportions. I spent the next 2 weeks watching a private dramatization show. The woman started walking with a cane. Detail: she fell on her ass and had a good leg, and whenever she passed my house, she made a point of visibly limping. Sometimes she coughed. I don't know if it was a special effect or just a lack of shame. She turned an attempt at vandalism into a theatrical piece of social denunciation. She went to the neighborhood newspaper, wrote a column about the dangers of unauthorized structures, and indirectly referred to me as the neighbor reluctant to follow the standards of coexistence, which would make me want to laugh if it weren't for the fact that she actually filed the HOA's health insurance claim, saying she fell into community assignment. Now, imagine the level of insanity. The woman tried to justify trespassing by saying she was doing her civic duty to inspect visual irregularities. And this is where you think, oh, it'll stop now. But no, never underestimate someone with free time, a sense of superiority, and an HOA booklet in hand. She decided to sue me. The day I received the summons was as surreal as everything else. A beige envelope, the kind that looks like it's straight out of a legal novel, was carefully stuffed into my mailbox. For a second, I thought it was just another useless bulletin from the HOA, like, "We remind you that fences cannot go beyond a certain area." But no, it was official. It was an official notice. The woman was suing me, and the reason: structural negligence and omission in relation to community safety. That's right. She fell for trying to destroy my antenna, and in some way that only her logic understands, I became the culprit. My first impulse was to laugh, to the point of scaring the neighbor's dog. Then came the second impulse, the urge to go to her house and ask her what the alternative reality she lives in tastes like. But I stopped myself. I decided that if she wanted a theater, I'd bring popcorn and a lawyer. For weeks, I accumulated evidence, screenshots of messages in the neighborhood group where she talked about the metallic abomination that stained our sky, photos from the day of the crash, including a beautiful image in which she appears with her head down, her butt up, trying to crawl to the antenna as if she were cosplaying a military man in a minefield. Everything was neatly organized in a folder with colored tabs. If she was going to be in the circus, she had to be in full costume. In court, she appeared with a neck brace, like the kind you buy in a masquerade costume store, and an expression of someone who had just seen the bankruptcy of humanity, pretending to be fragile, with a tiny purse hanging from her arm, and a Bible, of course, as if the judge was going to fall for it. And he did, to be honest. The judge was that soft guy, you know? He listens to everyone with a sleepy face and just wants to get to the coffee break. She began her testimony as if she were recounting a war trauma. She said that she saw the structure. She couldn't even say antenna. The word seemed to burn her tongue. That she felt a moral duty. That she acted for the good of the community. And that, when she tried to get closer for a simple visual inspection, the roof caved in. Yes, now my roof had structural problems too. I was about to discover that my house was a black hole about to swallow up the neighborhood. I almost stood up to applaud. The performance deserved an Oscar. She cried, or tried to. A solitary tear fell in the corner of her eye, a little crooked, dripping slowly, as she said she woke up every night with back pain and visions of the fall. Yes, visions, as if she were a war veteran, and not a lady who had tripped over her own ego. My turn to speak came, and, frankly, I was ready to explode. But I stopped myself. I said that I never authorized her to enter my property, that she climbed a ladder without permission, that she tried to manipulate the HOA rules to justify a personal obsession, and, above all, that my antenna was legal. Oh, and of course, I presented the photos. A beautiful sequence. Fall, grass, ass on the ground, everything. Her lawyer tried to argue that, even though it was an unauthorized action, the defendant should still take care of the integrity of anyone on his property. This coming from someone who broke into my roof with a wrench. I was just waiting for him to say that I should have put a slippery floor sign on top of the tiles. But the best was yet to come. A witness appeared, the street gardener who happened to see the whole scene, and his statement was the icing on the cake. She climbed up, rolled over, and fell by herself. She was trying to move the antenna with a tool. It looked like a cartoon. The judge even shook his head in disbelief. And that was that. The judge's blasé face changed. He realized that he was in front of a circus, and that he was the main clown if he continued to give credit to it. The decision was swift. The case was dismissed. No right to appeal, and a formal warning to her for abuse of judicial process. It was beautiful. I almost got up and did a moonwalk to the courthouse door, but of course she didn't stop there. Because that kind of person doesn't give up. She may lose a battle, but she believes she's fighting a holy war. When she left the courtroom, she even had the nerve to look at me and say, "You may have won today, but it's not over yet." And he walked away with a limp, as if the whole thing had been just the first episode of a long season of suburban drama. After court, I thought, I swear, I really thought, that she would calm down, that the fall, the embarrassment, the lost lawsuit, all that would be enough to put the brakes on her obsession. But of course, I underestimated the accumulated insanity of a person who thinks they've been sent by God to restore the aesthetics of a neighborhood. It didn't take a week, and the new chapters of the soap opera began. First came the letters. No more little notes nailed down with crepe tape. Now she's outdone herself. Letters printed on fake HOA letterhead, with formal language worthy of a lawyer in a cheap movie. It said that my home was still under observation for recurring aesthetic and structural violations. Note well, structural. The woman, who fell off my roof by herself, now wanted to imply that my house was practically a condemned building. Then came the visits from the appraisers. 3 different gentlemen with fake association inspection badges stuck to their chests with double-sided tape came to ring my doorbell on different days to assess the condition of the property. One of them even brought a clipboard with blank sheets of paper. When I asked where they came from, they all said they had been sent by the HOA. I called the current president of the committee, who was fed up with it too, and he confirmed. No one authorized anything. It was all her personal invention. The woman was creating her own army of illegal real estate appraisers, a pirate version. But the height of the madness was when she started manipulating the other residents. She made a kind of pamphlet, distributed box by box, warning about the resident who insists on maintaining a structure that attracts lightning and interferes with the signal of other residences. That's right. Now the antenna was also accused of technological sabotage and a potential killer on stormy days. I became the official villain of the neighborhood. People began to look at me sideways. Some crossed the street when they saw me. There was even a child who asked his mother if I was the gentleman who fights birds with a magic antenna. That's when I decided to fight back. I started documenting everything. Photos of every flyer, video of the fake assessors, audio of the woman talking to her neighbor at the gate about how, if nobody did anything, the antenna would fall on its own again, but next time with bigger consequences. It turned into a dossier, a folder full of insanity, so rich in detail that it would make a documentary. I called a lawyer, the same one from the previous time, who already knew the case, and all he said was, "Again?" This time, we filed a protective order. Yes, a protective order against the woman who wanted to climb on my roof again. And it was a success. The judge not only approved it, but imposed a 100-meter limit between her and my home, with a fine if it was broken. And do you know what she did? She started walking with a tape measure. Yes, a 100-meter tape measure. And she stopped exactly at the boundary, looking at my house as if she were monitoring it from afar with superpowers. It was hard not to laugh. It became a neighborhood attraction. There were even teenagers who started filming it and posting it as the perimeter lady. Over time, the joke spread. People started laughing at her. Support evaporated. Those who had once waved dismissively now shunned her. The HOA committee, embarrassed, held an extraordinary meeting and unanimously removed her from the position that shouldn't even exist, but which she had self-assigned as aesthetic leader of the neighborhood. The title was officially extinguished. And then, silence. For the first time in months, the neighborhood was quiet. No flyers, no drama, no woman trying to stunt on my roof. She still lives there, of course. She still gives me hateful looks when I walk past, but that's all it is now. Looks. Her world, made up of fake letterhead, antenna PowerPoint, and dramatic falls, has collapsed. And what about me? I keep my antenna. Firm, beautiful, pointing to the sky like a monument to resistance against the collective delirium of an out-of-control neighbor. If it were in your backyard, with a neighbor like that trying to climb onto your roof to pull down an antenna, would you let it go? Or would you climb the ladder together to push her back to reality? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to leave a like.